Hello everybody and welcome to my ride up the grade. I did a little warm-up of like 10-15 minutes and then I started the route that contains the grade that is starting here right now. And the route is called Elevation Evaluation, where you have roughly 3 kilometer, 2.8 kilometer roll-in, and then you're getting onto the grade. The grade is a 3.5 kilometer climb that is getting quite steep in the end, with around 12-13% in the final bits, and it is split over 10 segments. So it's you see here on the table on the left, you see the individual segments. So it's a little bit like when you're going up Alp d'Huez, you will always see your average power for each of the segments. I'm riding here with a new head-up display. You see on the left side, you see the power and the average power and the energy expenditure. But you can actually customize that display. I started relatively strong. So my idea was to be around 10% above my predicted FTP, 10 to 15%. So on my previous tests, I achieved always around 350 watt FTP, but it's already 9 months ago that I did my last test. So I thought, okay, 350 watts, I know that if I do a 10-minute effort, the system will calculate between 10-15% of that value to estimate the FTP. And so I plan to hold around 400 watts for the whole ride. Maybe going a little bit harder in the beginning, but I know that from my rides this year that I can hold between 380 and 400 watts for between 10 and 15 minutes, depending on how the legs feel. I had a very big training week last week, so I did over 800 kilometer in the French Alps because I was in Nice for training. So I do know that my legs were a little bit fatigued, but I still thought that okay, after a 1 day rest and a short ride the day before, I should be able to do a good test. So let's talk a little bit about the test and what the effort is compared to the official FTP tests that are in Zwift. So in Zwift you have basically two different tests. You have I would say the standard FTP test protocol, where you do your short efforts and then you do a 20-minute efforts, and then it's basically calculated based on 95% of that to get to the FTP value. And then the other test is the one that I actually like to do quite often in the past, is the ramp test, where you are riding 20 watts harder every 1 minute until you can't ride anymore. And then the test will take the final power of the last minute that you were able to ride, and then based on that is taken, I think it is 70% of that, to estimate your FTP. So in that test, I usually ended up with around 480 watts in the final minute, and then based on that, it was calculating my FTP. The challenge with the ramp test is that if you are a rider which is very strong in short efforts, like 2-3 minutes, basically VO2 max efforts, then that test will favor you and likely will overestimate your FTP. Because I am not that kind of rider, usually the ramp test actually has been giving out quite similar values to my normal FTP test or the other FTP tests that I did. So what is this test? So this test, I would recommend riding it with a lower trainer difficulty setting, for the only purpose that you don't want to be constantly shifting gears because of the change in gradient. So that is my recommendation. It doesn't really matter which gear you're in, because in the end it's all about the power. But I usually prefer riding Zwift with a quite low trainer difficulty setting to avoid shifting constantly, just because I find it annoying. Yeah, so on this test, it's all about pacing hard, but still not too to be not too crazy in the beginning. So you need to keep your keep some energy left for the final. You can also see the progress in a percentage. If you look at the bottom left, you see the percentage ticking over. So we're now getting over 50% because we've passed the halfway point. Be aware that even if you've passed the halfway point in percentage, you may not have passed a halfway point in time because there's a quite steep part in the end. So you need to take that into account. Of course, ideally, you will pace it relatively steadily and then be able to maybe slightly accelerate get a little bit higher power in the past or in the last 1.5 kilometer, maybe the last 5 minutes, last 3 minutes, to really get a kind of a negative split. And you will see your heart rate reaching the max towards the end of the ride. You can see here me pedaling on the ride that I'm really getting close to exhaustion. It is getting hard. Riding now already 6 minutes at around 400 watts. I'm at 395, so slightly below my target. And you see the heart rate is already at 175. My max heart rate that I can reach fresh on short efforts is just over 190. I think it was 192 that I managed last time. But on a longer effort like this, I would expect to maybe hit 183 to 185 before I blow up and I'm game over. So I can definitely recommend that test. Also interesting to compare what is your result from a normal FTP test versus the ramp test versus this test. It's a normal ride, so you will not find it in the FTP test section in Zwift, but just in the normal routes. When you look into Wattopia, you can find it there under the name, as I said previously, elevation evaluation. And if you do the ride and you will maybe blow up before the end, as long as you've done at least 8 minutes, it will show you an FTP calculation in the end. So even if you will blow up and then just crawl to the finish with 100 watts for the last 2 minutes or 3 minutes, as I understand, that will not negatively affect the calculation of your FTP because it will use the minimum, the best 8 minutes to calculate your FTP. Of course, if you manage to keep a high value for longer, it will get a better value out of it. The total ride took me 11 minutes. I actually was hoping to get under 11 minutes, but that was not possible. Maybe I will aim for that in the future to see if I can manage it. You see here that I'm getting a little bit closer to the top and pushing a little bit harder. I think my maximum 5 minutes was actually at 410 watts. Which was the last 5 minutes where I managed to increase my power a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about FTP and what it is and what it's used for. So if you look at the actual definition from Andrew Coggan, who was the first in 2006 to come up with the whole idea of FTP, it means it's the maximum power that a cyclist is able to maintain without excessive fatigue. And I think this without excessive fatigue is something that is very often maybe misunderstood or just ignored, because very often people just say, okay, it's your maximum 1 hour power. But if you ride 1 hour and you are completely blown up and your body is full of lactate by the end of the hour, that would not be without excessive fatigue. Then you are extremely fatigued. So I think in most cases the actual FTP is lower than what is the result from these tests. And therefore, I think it is maybe better to work with the lactate threshold when it comes to setting your threshold zones or your zones based on threshold. And so my lactate threshold, which is the point when the body is not able to clear lactate faster than it's produced, is actually around 320 watts. And I would also say this should be your, for example, Ironman 70.3 power or close to that, because if you are able to ride for, let's say, for in my case, for 2 hours for 90 kilometers or just over 2 hours, and your body was not increasing its lactate to a point that it cannot be cleared, you should still be good enough to do a good run. If you would ride harder than that, your body would be filling up with acid, and you will have a horrible run. So I usually aim for my lactate threshold or just below my lactate threshold in 70.3 racing. And I know that I can hold that for a longer time. Functional threshold, I've never done a race where I was actually doing a 1 hour effort. I got pretty close to it in some shorter crit races, but they're usually the normalized power is closer to the actual FTP. So here I'm reaching the top, pretty smashed, pretty happy, 350 watts FTP. So it's basically the same than what I reached in the RAM test. I think the last RAM test was 353, but that is because I'm also not a rider who's very good in sprints. So hope you enjoyed it, and I recommend you doing it and enjoy the grade on Zwift.